Dear student, good morning to all of you. I hope you people are fit and fine. So, in furtherance of previous video lecture, let us see what is the position of non-recognition and legal effect of it. Effects of recognition. So, there has been developing since the 1930s a doctrine of non-recognition where under certain conditions a factual situations A factual situation will not be recognized because of strong reservations as to the morality or legality of the actions that have been adopted in order to bring about the factual situation. It is a doctrine that has also been reinforced by the principle that legal rights cannot derive from an illegal situation. Ex injuria jus non oritur. Again, I am repeating, it is a doctrine that has also been reinforced by the principle that legal rights cannot derive from an illegal situation. This approach was particularly stimulated by the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931. Manchuria चीन का part है. The US Secretary of State declared in 1932 that the illegal invasion would not be recognized as it was contrary to the 1928 Pact of Paris, that was the famously known Kellogg-Briand Pact, which had outlawed war as an instrument of national policy. The doctrine of not recognizing any situation, treaty or agreement brought about by non-legal means was named the Stimson Doctrine after the American Secretary of State who put it forward. It was reinforced not long afterwards by a resolution of the Assembly of the League of Nations, stressing that League members should not recognize any situation, treaty, or agreement brought about by means contrary to the League's covenant or the Pact of Paris. However, state practice until the Second World War was not encouraging. The Italian conquest of the Empire of Ethiopia was recognized and the German takeover of Czechoslovakia was accepted. The Soviet Union made a series of territorial acquisitions in 1940, ranging from areas of Finland to the Baltic states of Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia, and Bessarabia. These were recognized de facto over the years by Western powers, though not by the United States. The doctrine of non-recognition was examined anew after 1945. Article 2, Clause 4 of the United Nations Charter prohibits the threat or use of force inter alia against the territorial integrity of states, while the draft Declaration on the Rights and Duties of States in 1949 emphasized that territorial acquisitions by states were not to be recognized by other states, where achieved by means of the threat or use of force or in any other manner inconsistent with international law and order. The Declaration on Principles of International Law 1970 also included a provision to the effect that no territorial acquisition resulting from the threat or use of force shall be recognized as legal. And Security Council Resolution 242 of the year 1967 on the solution to the Middle East conflict emphasized the inadmissibility of requisition of territory by war. तो अब वार के थ्रू आप कोई भी इस तरीके की टेरिटरी का एक्वायर नहीं कर सकते. दे आर आउटलॉ. रोडेशिया, अभी इसका नाम जिम्बाब्वे है. रोडेशिया यूनिलेटरली प्रोक्लेम्ड इट्स इंडिपेंडेंस इन नवंबर 1965 and in the years of its existence did not receive official recognition from any state at all, although it did maintain diplomatic relations with South Africa and Portugal prior to the revolution of 1974. The day following the Rhodesian Declaration of Independence, the Security Council passed a resolution calling upon all states not to accord its recognition and to refrain from assisting it. The Council imposed selective mandatory economic sanctions on Rhodesia and they were later made comprehensive. Similar action was taken with regard to the Bantustan's territories of South Africa declared by that state to be independent. The Security Council also adopted Resolution 541 in 1983, which deplored the purported cessation of part of Cyprus occupied by Turkey in 1974 and termed the proposed Turkish Cypriot state legally invalid. In 1990, the Security Council adopted Resolution 662, which declared the Iraqi annexation of Kuwait null and void. Security Council ने कुवैत जो इराक ने कुवैत को कब्जा कर लिया था, ऑक्युपाई कर लिया था, उसको null and void डिक्लेयर कर दिया and called on all states and institutions not to recognize the annexation. The principle of non-recognition of title to territory acquired through aggression in violation of international law was also reaffirmed in the Braco Inter-Entity Boundary Award with regard to aggression in Bosnia. So the role of non-recognition as an instrument of sanction as well as means of pressure and a method of protecting the wronged inhabitants of a territory was discussed more fully in the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice in the Namibia case in 1971, dealing with South Africa's presence in that territory. The ICJ held that since the continued South African occupancy was illegal, member states of the United Nations were obliged to recognize that illegality and the invalidity of South Africa's acts concerning Namibia and were under a duty to refrain from any actions implying recognition of the legality of or lending support or assistance to the South African presence and administration. So it was non-recognition. Now let us see the legal effect of recognition. Legal effect of recognition. In this section, some of the legal results that flow from the recognition or non-recognition of an entity, both in the international sphere and within the municipal law of particular states, will be noted. Although recognition may legitimately be regarded as a political tool, it is one that nevertheless entails important consequences in the legal field. First, what is the legal effect internationally? In the majority of cases, it can be accepted that recognition of a state or government is a legal acknowledgement of a factual state of affairs. Nevertheless, it should not be assumed that non-recognition of a state will deprive that entity of rights and duties before international law, exercising, of course, those situations where it may be possible to say that recognition is constitutive of the legal entity. In general, the political existence of a state is independent of recognition by other states, and thus an unrecognized state must be deemed subject to the rules of international law. It cannot consider itself free from restraint as to aggressive behavior, nor can its territory be regarded as terra nullius. States which have signed international agreements are entitled to assume that states which they have not recognized but which have similarly signed the agreement are bound by that agreement. For example, United Kingdom treated the German Democratic Republic (GDR) as bound by its signature of 1963 Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, even when the state was not recognized by the UK. Non-recognition, with its consequent absence of diplomatic relation, may affect the unrecognized state in asserting its rights or other states in asserting its duties under international law, but will not affect the existence of such rights and duties. The position is, however, different under municipal law. Internally, because recognition is fundamentally a political act, it is reserved to the executive branch of government. Recognition is fundamentally a political act. Therefore, it is reserved to the executive branch of government. This means that the judiciary must, as a general principle, accept the discretion of the executive and give effect to its decisions. The courts cannot recognize a state or government. They can only accept and enforce the legal consequences which flow from the executive's political decision. Although this situation has become more complex with the change in policy from express recognition of governments to acceptance of dealing with such entities. To this extent, recognition is constitutive, because the act of recognition itself creates legal results within the domestic jurisdiction. In the United Kingdom and United States particularly, the courts feel themselves obliged to accept the verdict of the executive branch of the government as to whether a particular entity should be regarded as recognized or not. If the administration has recognized a state or government and so informs the judiciary by means of a certificate, the position of that state or government within the municipal structure is totally transformed. It may sue in the domestic courts and be granted immunity from suit in certain instances. Its own legislative and executive acts will be given effect to in the courts of the recognizing state, and its own diplomatic representatives will be able to claim the various immunities accorded to the official envoys of a recognized state. In addition, it will be entitled to possession in the recognizing state of property belonging to its predecessor. So let us see what is the position in United Kingdom relating to legal effect of recognition. The English courts have adopted the attitude over many years that an entity unrecognized by the Foreign Office would be treated before the court as if it did not exist, and accordingly it would not be able to claim immunity before the courts. This meant in one case that ships of the unrecognized provisional government of northern Russia would not be protected by the courts from claims affecting them. Similarly, an unrecognized state or government is unable to appear before the courts as a plaintiff in an action. This particular principle prevented the revolutionary government of Bern in 1804 from taking action to restrain the Bank of England from dealing with funds belonging to the previous administration of the city. The leading case in English law on the issue of effects of recognition of an entity within the domestic sphere is Luther versus Sagor case. It is the milestone landmark case on legal effect of recognition within the domestic spheres. Luther versus Sagor 1921 का एक केस है. This concerned the operation and produce of a timber factory in Russia owned by the plaintiff, which had been nationalized in 1919 by the Soviet government. In 1920, the defendant company purchased a quantity of wood from the USSR, and this was claimed in England by the plaintiff as their property, since it had come from what has been their factory. It was argued by them that 1919 Soviet decree should be ignored before the English courts since the United Kingdom had not recognized the Soviet government. The lower court agreed with this contention and the matter then came to the Court of Appeal. In the meantime, the UK recognized the Soviet government. De facto and foreign officer informed the Court of Appeal of this in writing. The result was that the higher court was bound to take note of the Soviet decree and accordingly the plaintiffs lost their case, since a court must give effect to the legislation of a recognized state or government. The court also held that the fact that Soviet government was recognized de facto and not de jure did not affect the issue. Another interesting point is that since the Foreign Office certificate included a statement that the former provisional government of Russia recognized by the UK had been dispersed during December 1917, the court inferred the commencement of the Soviet government from that date. The essence of the matter was that Soviet government was not now accepted as the sovereign government of the USSR as from December 1917. And since recognition once given is retroactive and relates back to the date that the authority of the government was accepted as being established and not the date on which recognition is granted. The Soviet decree of 1919 was deemed to be a legitimate act of a recognized government. This was so even though at that date the Soviet government was not recognized by UK. The purpose of the retroactivity provision is to avoid possible influence in the internal affairs of the entity recognized, since otherwise legislation made prior to recognition might be rejected. However, this will depend always upon the terms of the executive certificate by which the state informs its courts of the recognition. Should the Foreign Office insist that the state informs that the state or government in question is to be recognized as a sovereign state or government as of the date of the action, the court would be bound by this. As is the case with legislation, contracts made by an unrecognized government will not be enforced in English court. Without the required action by the political authorities, an unrecognized entity does not exist as a legal person before the municipal courts. The case of unrecognized entity does not exist as a legal person before the municipal courts. So the case of Luther versus Sagor suggested that in general, the legal consequences of a de facto recognition would be the same as a de jure one. This was emphasized in Haile Selassie versus Cable and Wireless Limited, case number 2 of 1939, but regarded as restricted to acts in relation to persons or property in the territory which the de facto government has been recognized as effectively controlling. In other words, a different situation would ensue with regard to persons or property situated outside the territory of a state or government. In the Haile Selassie case, the Emperor of Ethiopia was suing a British company for money owing to him under an agreement. The problem was that when the action was brought, the UK had recognized the Italian forces as the de facto authority in Ethiopia, while Haile Selassie was still recognized as de jure sovereign. The court held that since the case concerned a debt recoverable in England and not the validity of acts with regard to persons or property in Ethiopia, the de jure authority, Emperor Haile Selassie, was entitled to the sum due from the company, and the de facto control of Italians did not affect this. However, before the defendant's appeal was heard, The United Kingdom extended de jure recognition to the Italian authorities in Ethiopia. The Court of Appeal accepted that this related back and was deemed to operate as from the date of the de facto recognition. Since this had occurred prior to the case starting, it meant that the Italian government was now to be recognized as de jure government of Ethiopia before and during the time of the hearing of the action. Accordingly, Haile Selassie was divested of any right whatsoever to sue for the recovery of the money owing. This problem of a relationship between a de facto and de jure government, as far as English courts were concerned, manifested itself again during the Spanish Civil War. The case of Arant Jaju Mendy, 1939 Apex Court, concerned a private steamship registered in Bilbao in the Basque province of Spain. In June 1937, following the capture of that region by the forces of General Franco, the opposing Republican government issued a decree requisitioning all ships registered in Bilbao. 9 months later, the nationalist government of Franco also passed a decree taking control over all Bilbao vessels. In the meantime, the Arant Jaju Mendy itself was in London when the Republican government issued a writ to obtain possession of the ship. The owners opposed this while accepting the nationalist requisition order. The owners opposed this while accepting the nationalists' requisition order. It was accepted rule of international law that a recognized state cannot be sued or otherwise brought before the court of another state. Accordingly, the nationalists argued that since their authority had been recognized de facto by the UK over the areas they actually controlled, their decree was valid and could not be challenged in the English courts. Therefore, the action by the Republican government must be dismissed. The case came before the House of Lords, where it was decided that nationalist government, as the de facto authority of much of Spain, including the region of Bilbao, was entitled to be regarded as a sovereign state and was able to benefit from the normal immunities which follow therefrom. Thus, the action by the Republican government failed. The House of Lords pointed out that it did not matter that the territory over which the de facto authority was exercising sovereign powers was from time to time increased or diminished. This case marks the high point in the attribution of characteristics to a de facto authority and can be criticized for its over-generous assessment of the status of such an entity. The problems faced by the English court when the rights and obligations of a de jure government and de facto government claiming the same territory appear to be in conflict have been briefly noted. Basically, the actions of a de facto authority with regard to people and property with this sphere of control will be recognized in an English court, but where property is situated and recoverable in England, the de jure sovereign will have precedence. Again, I am repeating. Basically, the actions of de facto authority with regard to people and property within the sphere of control will be recognized in an English court, but where property is situated and recoverable in England, the de jure sovereign will have precedence. A similarly complicated situation arises where the interest of two recognized de jure governments of the same state are involved, as one supersedes the other. Problems can arise concerning the issue of retroactivity. That is, how far the court will relate back actions of a de jure government. Since recognition is normally retroactive to the moment of inception of the particular state or government. The matter was discussed in the Gdynia America Liner versus Boglowski's case. During Second World War, the Polish government in exile stationed in London was recognized by the UK as the de jure government of Poland. However, on 28th June 1945, the Communist Provisional Government was established with effective control of the country, and at midnight on 5 July, the UK recognized that government as the de jure government of Poland. A couple of days prior to this recognition, the Polish government in exile made an offer to Polish seamen of compensation in the event of leaving the merchant navy service. The money was to be paid by the particular employers to seamen not wanting to work for the Communist Provisional Government. In the bogus In this Boguslawski case, the employers refused to pay the compensation to seamen requesting it and argued that UK recognition de jure of the provisional government was retroactive to 28 June. This being the date of the government effectively took control of the country. If this was the case, then acts of government in exile after 28 June ceased to be the effect, and thus the offers of compensation could not be enforced in the English court. The House of Lords emphasized the general proposition that recognition operates retroactively. However, they modified the statement by declaring that the courts had to give effect not only to acts done by the new government after recognition, but also to acts done before the recognition, insofar as those acts related to matters under its control at the time when the acts were done. It was stated that while the recognition of the new government had certain retroactive effects, the recognition of the old government remained effective down to the date which it was in fact withdrawn. Problems might have arisen had the old government before withdrawal of recognition attempted to take action with respect to issues under the control of the new government. However, that was not involved in this case. Now, in other words, and in the circumstances of the case, the principle of retroactivity of recognition was regarded as restricted to matters within the effective control of the new government. Where some outside the effective, where something outside the effective control of the new government, where something outside the effective control of the new government is involved, it would appear that the recognition does not operate retroactively, and that prior to the actual date of recognition, one would have to accept and put into effect the acts of the previous de jure government. Another case which came before the courts in the same year was Civil Air Transport Incorporation versus Central Air Transport Corporation in 1953, and it similarly failed to answer the question mentioned above. It involved the sale of aircraft belonging to the nationalist government of China, which had been flown to the British Crown colony of Hong Kong. Such aircraft were sold to an American company after the communist government established effective control over the country, but before it had been recognized by the UK. The court accepted that the nationalist government had been entitled to the aircraft and pointed out that retroactivity of recognition operates to validate acts of de facto government, which has subsequently become the new de jure government, and not to invalidate acts of the previous de jure government. It is to be noted that the communist government did not attempt to nullify the sale to the American company. Had it done so, a new situation would have been created, but it is as yet uncertain whether that would have materially altered the legal result. The general doctrine adhered to by the UK with regard to recognition and now diplomatic dealings is that it will be accorded upon the evidence of effective control. It is used to acknowledge factual situations and not as a method of exhibiting approval or otherwise. However, this is not so in all cases, and there are a number of governments in effective control of their countries and unrecognized by the UK. One major example was the former German Democratic Republic (GDR). Since the prime consequence of non-recognition is that English courts will not give effect to any laws of unrecognized entity, problems are thus likely to arise in ordinary international political and commercial life. Some of the consequential problems of non-recognition were addressed in the Foreign Corporations Act 1991. This provides that a corporation incorporated in a territory not recognized by the UK government as a state would be regarded as having legal personality within the UK, where the laws of that territory were applied by a settled court system. In other words, the territory would be treated for this purpose as if it were a recognized state, thereby enabling its legislation to be applied in this circumstance on the normal conflict of rules basis. The point should be stressed that the legislation was not intended at all to impact upon recognition issues as such. Since the UK decision to abandon recognition of government in 1980, the question arises as to attitude of the courts in this matter. In particular, it appears that they may be called upon to examine the nature of the UK government's dealing with a new regime in order to determine its status for municipal law purpose. Now, what is the position in United States of America? The situation in the US with regard to the recognition or non-recognition of foreign entities is similar to that pertaining in the UK, with some important differences. Only a recognized state or government can in principle sue in the US courts. This applies irrespective of the state of diplomatic relations, providing there is no war between the two. However, an unrecognized state or government may in certain circumstances be permitted access before the American courts. This would appear to depend on the facts of each case and a practical appreciation of the entity in question. For example, in Transport Aeros de Angola versus Ronair, it is the case of 1982. It was held that in particular circumstances where the United States State Department, US State Department had clearly stated that allowing the plaintiff, a corporation owned by the unrecognized government of Angola, allowing that plaintiff access to the court would be consistent with the foreign policy interests of the United States, the jurisdictional bar placed upon the court would be deemed to have been lifted. As in the UK, a declaration by the executive will be treated as binding the courts, but in the USA, the courts appear to have a greater latitude. In the absence of this suggestion clarifying how far the process of non-recognition is to be applied, the courts are more willing than their UK counterpart to give effect to particular acts of an unrecognized body. Indeed, in the Carl Jessis case, Lord Reed and Wilberforce referred in approving terms to the trend evident in decisions of US courts to give recognition to the actual facts or realities found to exist in the territory in question in the interest of justice and common sense. Such recognition did not apply to every act, but in Lord Wilberforce's word, it did apply to private rights or acts of everyday occurrence, or perfunctory acts of administration. How far this extends has never been precisely defined. So it was the difficulties engendered by the American Civil War that first stimulated a reprisal of the non-recognition, no existence doctrine. It was not possible to ignore every act of the Confederate authorities, and so the idea developed that such rules adopted by the Confederate States, as were not hostile to the Union or the authority of the central government, or didn't conflict with the terms of the US Constitution, would be treated as valid and enforceable in the court system. The doctrine was developed in the case before the New York Court of Appeals. When discussing the status of the unrecognized Soviet government, Judge Cardozo noted that an unrecognized entity which had maintained control over its territory may gain for its acts and decrees a validity quasi-governmental if violence of fundamental principles of justice or to our public policy might otherwise be done. This thesis progressed rapidly in the period immediately preceding the American recognition of the USSR and led in Salimov versus Standard Oil Company of New York to the enforcement of a Soviet oil nationalization decree with the comment that to refuse to recognize that Soviet Russia is a government regulating the internal affairs of the country is to give to fictions an air of reality, which they do not deserve. This decision, diametrically opposed to the Luther versus Sagor approach, constituted a step toward the abolition of differences between the judicial treatment of the acts of recognized and unrecognized government. However, the limits of this broad doctrine were more carefully defined in the Merit, where the court refused to give effect to nationalization of an Estonian ship by the government of the unrecognized Soviet Republic of Estonia. However, the ship in dispute was located in an American port of the date of nationalization order, and there appears to be a difference in treatment in some cases depending upon whether the property was situated inside or outside the country concerned. However, the creation of judicial entities by unrecognized state will not be allowed to circumvent executive policy. So, however, there is some uncertainty in the United States as to the operation of the retroactive doctrine, particularly as it affects events occurring outside the country. There is a line of cases suggesting that only those acts of unrecognized government performed in its territory could be validated by the retroactive operation of recognition. While, on the other hand, there are cases illustrating the opposite proposition decided by the Supreme Courts. Now, this has been the legal effect of recognition. So, legal effect of recognition is to be considered internationally and domestically. What is the legal effect of recognition or non-recognition in international law is one aspect. And what is the legal effect of recognition or non-recognition in internal matter? In domestic law or municipal law, and this is more complicated and more complex as we have discussed the British and American practices relating to that. So I hope that this video will be fruitful to understand the legal effect of recognition, etc. Thank you very much.